Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I hope all of you had a great weekend and you did something fun. You are energized for this week as we head on out of January. And hey, again, I hope all of you are doing well. That's especially well because I know so many of my friends and family and what have you, they are dealing with the flu, and as I understand it, our guest is as well, but she sounds great, so we're not going to worry about it. But everyone out there, I hope you are sanitizing. I hope you are well and you don't catch this thing, because it is, oh man, to say it's infectious is an understatement. It's going to be a bad year, but hey, in the meantime, let's take your mind off it with some Computer America. So today on the show, we have a company called WP Engine joining us, and we're going to be talking all about what they do, how they do it, and hey, we have someone great from the company to talk to us all about their product. And but yeah, a few things to mention before we get started, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything and anything for today's show. Be it a link to our guest website, any articles that we do later on in the program, demonstrations, videos, things like that, found in one place right there at our website. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, winner every Friday, and be sure to check out the live video stream where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. Still a radio show, but hey, like to throw that out there. So with, just real quick, run through that so we can get to our guest. And once again, joining us is Mary Ellen Dugan. She is the Chief Marketing Officer for WP Engine. You can find more at WPEngine.com. But let's get this started. So, Mary Ellen, welcome on to the Computer America Show, and I hope you are doing well.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to channel your energy. So even if I'm feeling a little low, I'm going to not even think about the flu. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Our pleasure to have you here. So why don't we go ahead and get a little bit of background on WP Engine for those who may not have heard of it, and a little bit of your background. How did you find yourself working with them?
Sure. Well, I hesitate to say this, but I guess I have about 20 plus years in marketing, really across agencies and on the company side with brands, really with an emphasis on building corporate and product brands driving business. And probably about 8 years ago, I was really looking for an opportunity to kind of bridge that gap of art and science with marketing, so the strategic side, as well as the science side and the fast-moving component of technology. So had the chance to work with great brands like Dell, Indeed.com, and about a year and a half ago joined WP Engine as their CMO. And WP Engine is the world's largest digital experience platform for WordPress. And so if any of the listeners don't know about WordPress, WordPress powers about 29% of the internet. So WordPress is an open source content management system. So you're probably visiting lots and lots of sites and digital experiences each and every day. So our company actually has a technology platform. If you build on and build with WordPress, we're able to help make your vision become a reality with tools that help you creatively manage that, analyze it, integrate it into your other tech stack, and certainly perform. So we are headquartered in Austin, have about 75,000 customers across the globe. It's just a growing area as people look at their digital experience, and we all use multiple digital experiences each day. So it's an exciting place for me as a marketer to be, and again, bridges that kind of marketing and tech combination.
Yeah, and that is something that we're definitely going to get into because we here at Computer America, we use WordPress as well, and we're definitely going to check out WordPress Engine after the show here. But WordPress is one of those things that if, they don't blatantly kind of say, hey, this is a WordPress site. They just kind of, allow people to build on top of that. And you really don't know when you're visiting a WordPress site or, or what have you, because, and I think that's a great thing because it's so customizable that it's not cookie cutter. It's not, just copy and paste over and over and over again. It's so customizable and so easy to build upon. And I guess WP Engine builds upon that. I guess for your customers, if I'm getting this right, feel free to correct me. You help, because there's so much customization you can do, you help guide their brand and their marketing and, what they do with their site and kind of guide them along, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think in today's world, as a business, you just can't get away without having a really dynamic digital and web experience. And so whether you're a small company, medium, or a large company is going to have maybe hundreds of different experiences within their portfolio, and a small organization may just have their .com or .org, what have you. But what WordPress does as an open source content management system is that it does allow that flexibility and that creativity. And so that's probably why you see it growing so rapidly. I mean, literally joining a year and a half ago, it was at 27% of the internet. Now it's 29. We don't see that stopping. So that open philosophy means you have a lot of creative people coming into it, using it, and it's very, very easy for companies, whether you're small or large, to get to market quickly.
Right. Now, if I'm reading this right, looks like we scheduled you a couple of weeks ago, or at least, you first reached out, and it seems like a lot of our questions still very pertinent, and we're going to get to all of them. But it's something that happened a couple of weeks ago, and I think the fallout we're still likely to see and, going to be experiencing for quite a while. And I'm talking about net neutrality and the FCC. And there were massive campaigns to get people energized, informed, educated, and they're still ongoing. I mean, I think the Burger King's attempt just went viral about a week ago, explaining net neutrality. Why don't we go ahead and, if you could, give us a brief overview, if that's even possible, on net neutrality and WP Engine's position on the new rules and what happened.
Sure. Well, I think that everybody would go into this and say, boy, this has become a pretty complicated arena. But what I would say is that WP Engine as a company, we've long supported a free and open internet and believe in those principles driving net neutrality. And as I said kind of earlier, companies, you simply can't operate without the web and a property. So one of the things without net neutrality, that does change the landscape for online businesses going forward. And whether you're a startup or you're a growing business, a couple of things that we look about, the risks to the availability and the searchability for companies, whether it's a small company or a product of a big company, et cetera, because SEO and things like that are impacted by speed. So we really, on behalf of our customers, really believe in a free and open, kind of unbiased internet. And then from there, it's really where the company has to have then they compete on the ability to innovate, be creative, make great products, things that are really in their arsenal to compete in, as opposed to just this, is the internet free and open? So I think right now this is, it remains to be seen what will happen, but an even playing field for everybody is something that we've always supported.
Right. Yeah. And, that's something that we certainly tried to cover here on the show when it was happening,
Sure.
before it happened. But at the same time, I think the writing on the wall was pretty apparent for, the coming weeks and months that, even despite all the protests and the, all the media attention it was getting, you could tell that, the people in charge of voting, the 5 people, was 3-2 in favor of repealing net neutrality. And now we get to kind of live with the fallout. So speaking of the fallout, and you have something here about Gen Z. Gen Z would be I think the adults that are just coming to age now, who have grown, who have lived with, let's face it, the internet their entire lives. It wasn't, I think, personally, I just barely caught the beginning of the internet, and then, I've spent most of my mature life on the internet. but a lot of our listeners out there, the internet was kind of this thing that slowly took over during the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, and now Gen Z is living in a world where you can only have the internet. It's not something that it's an either or proposition. And you're saying that net neutrality will affect them in particular ways because, again, they don't know a life other than to have the internet, and an open and free internet was kind of the crux of that. So talk about why, how it's going to affect them in particular.
Yeah, we in the fall commissioned a study which was the future of digital experience, and really this was an attempt to look across Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers, and really get a sense of how do each of those generations, what does their digital experience look like today, and what did they need for tomorrow? So, Gen Z, for folks, essentially are people born 1996 or later. So, the first of them turned 21, soon they'll be 22, and they are a generation that doesn't know the world without the internet. So, one of the really key findings was because of that, Gen Z really sees their digital experience kind of as their human experience. They've never known without it. They don't delineate between online or offline. And so their expectation of what they can get digitally and online is very, very different than other generations. So the FCC's vote really has potential impact to them because it's so integral into their everyday life. And while it's integral to every generation, this one doesn't know the world without it. It's essentially the air they breathe. So we actually think, one, they're a huge market segment that companies and brands need to attract. And then this net neutrality complexity, it may make that more difficult for them to be reached.
Right. Yeah. And part of the idea of net neutrality was that a particular service they could before net neutrality was repealed, it was even playing field. Packets were not discriminated. There was no such thing as internet fast lanes, quote unquote. There was not paid prioritization. It was simply kind of like a utility. It was kind of like let's take electricity, where the electric company didn't differentiate between electricity for your air conditioner, between electricity going to your dishwasher. It was just a service to be used. It was just a resource. Now we open up the possibility that let's say you have a particular internet provider. They make a deal with again, just pulling a streaming service off the top of my head, either Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, whatever. Let's say your internet provider makes a deal with one of those, you're going to be highly incentivized to use that one as opposed to the others. That is huge because I think a big argument, for the internet or against the internet was that if you don't like it, then don't use it or don't go online. Don't use their website. Don't use their services. Send them a check if you want to pay bills not online or things like this. You're saying that Gen Z, it's not that simple. It's not as simple as just do it offline because that's either cumbersome or unknown or just not the way that they do things. You think that's going to reshape Gen Z and how they kind of do things online?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the really interesting data points was that when we compared a couple of the different segments here, Gen Z, our research showed that 27% of them can't go more than 1 hour without being on the internet. I have a son. I think that's probably about right. He's in this category. While contrast that with 27% of boomers can go 2 or more days without it. So again, when you talk about reshaping their online experience, their expectation is so enormous of always having access to that. And so that's one of the biggest challenges of how, if that is their expectation, and I'm going to be on it almost essentially every minute of the day, and then it's somebody else is controlling that or at least routing me in different ways, it does change what their experience and their expectation. And this is, important because this generation right now has about $40 billion in buying power. So while they're young, they're only going to enter the workforce. They're only going to be more and more ever present, if you will. So as a marketer and as a brand, you need to be thinking about what is the online experience and how am I going to make sure that I'm still cutting through the clutter, and that if there's any restrictions, that it's not necessarily from the brand, it's actually a rule. So that's a huge challenge.
So I guess, and there's the philosophical side of this that I think we've harped on in the past before, but coming from a marketer standpoint, what's the best way to approach Gen Z and the new terms of the internet? Where is it you simply go with the biggest, most powerful marketing companies out there on the internet, or are there still rules that you can kind of you know make yourself more presentable and therefore get a larger audience just through word of mouth? I mean, from a marketing standpoint, what is the best way to kind of go about these new rules?
Well, I think it's a couple things kind of came out of this. One of the things from this Gen Z research was that how they use it. So 72% of Gen Z actually relies on the internet for entertainment. And that's a huge, huge shift from inform me and entertain me. So when you think of some of these, some of the things with the net neutrality concerns or issues are what kind of information would be coming to you and at what pace. And so I think one of the things when you talk about how are you going to reach this generation, one thing is just to be aware that entertainment is a really big component of how they absorb information, and that prior generations didn't really think about that. So, when we think about email and streaming and things like that, if you're a different generation, that actually is not how Gen Z sees it. They want all of that information coming to them in a very entertaining way. So that does play a pretty big role for digital marketers of how do I get in front of you, appearing to be entertaining and reaching you in a compelling way. I think that the digital marketer is really going to face a lot of challenges in getting in front of this audience and continuing to be that entertaining source if they don't feel that they're getting everything they want to access all the time.
Right. Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. So, uh, why don't we talk about how businesses out there that so they have to be entertaining. They can't just take it for granted that they've either done business outside the internet. They can't take it for granted that they have some kind of brand loyalty because your study. I'm very interested in checking that out. But just from personal experience, that brand loyalty really doesn't mean as much as just having either an engaging, simple, efficient way to shop online kind of beats out physical retail locations in a lot of cases. So I guess this is kind of the part where where WP Engine would kind of come in. Would be do you see that shoppers or Gen Z or just shoppers in general, if your website is not responsive, if it's not engaging, if it's not simple to use, are you seeing that these businesses are just can't compete in today's market?
Well, I think it's actually there's an interesting statistic which I, as a marketer, was really intrigued with. When you talk about advertising, I think, as you just said, hey, it's about the ease of the site, the digital experience versus the advertising. Here's a really fascinating thing that came out. Actually, this next generation, over 25% of them were fine with advertising, and that was actually the highest of the generations.
Really?
So they were fine with people, I'll just say, marketing to them and advertising to them. The big thing for them was that it was authentic and that you could somewhat, when they got to the experience, it predicted their needs. So I think that actually what has happened is this next generation is okay if you advertise to them. They don't want celebrity. They did not like celebrity advertising, but they were fine with advertising that felt authentic and you had a purpose to it. They were fine with coming and repeatedly coming back to your experience as long as it felt predictive for their needs. And they just wanted more. They were willing to give you more information than ever before. Here's how I shop, here's my personal data, et cetera, as long as it was secure. So I think the digital experience isn't going to go away. It isn't that, yes, the brick and mortar, there is an expectation that everyone in this generation said, school campuses, 45%, that's all going to be online. We're all going to only shop by the grocery store. So there is that sense, but the digital experience as a whole, as long as it's authentic and predictive to what they want and secure, actually this generation is going to follow those brands even more. So that's what we at WP Engine are saying, and really helping our customers of saying, make sure your content is constantly updated. Because again, back to that thing, I can't go more than 27 minutes without being on the internet. Make sure that this is where the data and that MarTech is going to be huge. If I'm going to have to predict, Ben, what you want, you only came here once, or I have to use analytics to understand what does Ben want when he gets to my digital experience, whether that's a news site or you're shopping for something. So those are the things that are really important. So then we go to net neutrality. All those things come into play where I have this expectation it's authentic, it's predictable, but I want it to be really fast. And so that becomes this huge complexity of, can I deliver all those things to you all the time as a small company or a large company?
Yeah, you put into words something that I've definitely noticed through different mediums. You know, and not even necessarily our own, but I'm a huge user of a service called Twitch. It's for streaming video games and the like. It's pretty popular among gamers. But I noticed that they have this huge, kind of thing that whenever someone has an advertiser or they'll, they'll scream, sell out, sell out, sell out. But at the same time, I think that most of the users and most of the audience out there that watches it, there's the vocal minority that says, how dare advertisers try to throw money and brainwash us? But I think that the majority out there says, here's a company, they have a service that we would probably be interested in. They're trying to align their values with our values by supporting content that we already enjoy. And, I think that, like you said, a lot of people are actually very receptive to that. It shows that they, that brands and, kind of non-celebrity content, that they're on the same page, if not, explicitly for their products, then for the same kinds of entertainment that they enjoy. It's something that I personally really like seeing. It shows that and sorry, real quick, it just shows that they're not, they're not dazzled by bright, shiny things, but more, people, we have common ground here.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's going to be even more apparent with this next generation. I think because of their quickness of consuming content and video, they actually want something to be constantly changing, updated. So the brands out there and the advertisers that feel like it's authentic and it wasn't, it added value. I actually think this generation can be your biggest advocates. Remember, millennials grew up, they were the first ones that really saw the YouTube stars, and it was kind of somebody else that was becoming the star. This Gen Z is actually a really interesting generation because they are now growing up, each of them. Many of them have their own online brands. They're very active in social media, so they understand how to market themselves and are receptive to that with companies. It just has to feel real, and so I think it's a real changing dynamic for companies in attracting this growing population, this growing segment. It's not going away.
So, broad stroke, once again, how do you think that most of the newer generation Gen Z, how do you think they feel about what happened with net neutrality? Do they approve of it?
I think it's fair to say that Gen Z, if they're aware of it, the older generation, the oldest of them, the 21, 22, I think would be opposed to any kind of private or actions that inhibit their ability to be open and unregulated because they don't distinguish between the online and the offline. I think so, and one of the things that came out of our top 4 responses across when we asked how do you improve an online experience, and this was all generations, it was freer, lower cost internet, and then improved access. So clearly there's a mandate out there that not only net neutrality should continue, but it's got to get better and cheaper, not necessarily more restrictive and more expensive. So I think that Gen Z, for those who would know about it, would say, because they've never seen it, right? For
Right.
them, they've always, I mean, I have a 12-year-old son, and if we're in the car or we're somewhere where he doesn't have Wi-Fi, it's a problem, right? So here you've got an entire generation that just, that's not the same thing, but you get it. So they're going to assume it is the air they breathe and they can have it. So I think they'll be opposed. I think it'll be interesting to see how they react to it, and will some of the older ones become more active as this conversation continues in the government sphere and policy. And then I think anyone who's really young in Gen Z right now doesn't know, and the problem there is they will feel like the company is not giving them the information, and that actually may not be the case. So that's the challenge that brands have currently in this situation.
Right. And, a lot of, we try to stay out of politics here on Computer America, but at the same
Sure.
time, when politics and technology meet, we kind of feel obligated to talk about it. And net neutrality was one of those things because, the chairman of the FCC was replaced with the new administration coming in, and so on and so forth. Essentially, it took an issue that, like you said, affects younger people much, much more viscerally than the older generation, and it took a single issue and said, look what happens when you don't participate in politics. And I think that is really motivating. I think in the coming months, in the coming years, the need and importance for kind of voting and that kind of thing. But at the same time, let's take your 12-year-old son for instance. He can't vote, just yet, and he can't speak his, he can speak his mind, but he can't, vote and say, here's what I want to see from my politicians and my government. What can Gen Z do, kind of either as consumers or just internet users? Is there any way they can take action, or is it simply wait until you vote and then go ahead and vote?
Well, I think I probably think about this two ways. From the business standpoint, one, we've all got to recognize that Gen Z is a dominant force here, and they are digitally dependent. So it's a credible opportunity for companies to, how do you get your brand's digital face out there and your website and constantly feel like you're delivering to the younger generation? So a brand and company's got to kind of take that. And then on the other side, it is complicated. I think right now, the biggest onus will be on the brands and the businesses to better stay educated on what they can do to reach this population on net neutrality, not necessarily push it back to the Gen Z consumer, but how does the business stay up on what do digital marketers, what can they do to reach people? There's great organizations like Battle for the Net that are, actively looking into this. And so I would say twofold. One, as a company, make sure that you understand Gen Z really needs this digital experience. It is important to them, and you're going to be successful if you're able to reach them. And then get really educated on how is this changing rapidly, and how is your digital marketing going to change? How can you I guess, stay competitive or stay ahead of this? Because I think right now Gen Z is just too young to be the ones that are going to overturn anything, and really it's in the business's best interest to how do I reach that consumer.
Right. And Marianne, would you mind staying over for just a couple minutes? We're coming up to a break here in just a moment, but I wanted to talk to you about WP Engine, the website, and what exactly it is that you offer companies. I see here you have a couple different tiers of plans. Would you mind staying over and talking about the different services you provide?
Happy to.
All right, perfect. So everyone out there, we are talking to Ms. Mary Ellen Dugan. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of WP Engine, and heavily focused on net neutrality. That was recently repealed here in November. They actually voted, but hey, that does mean that the rules are changing, and as a company, marketing, it's going to change. And so far, a lot of great information. So everyone, when we come back, we'll finish up our interview with WP Engine, and then we have a couple of stories to report on, including, get this, we have a couple of stories to report on, including Dell may actually sell itself to VMware. That's right, it's a company it already owns, and hey, it may sell itself here soon to itself. As well as CoinCheck, cryptocurrency, lost $400 million in what amounted to a bank heist. And hey, yes, of course, we're going to talk about Elon Musk Flamethrower because that's important. So everyone, music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Computer America and more WP Engine right after this. Stay tuned.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And we are talking to Miss Mary Ellen Dugan. She is the Chief Marketing Officer for WP Engine. And Mary Ellen, thank you so much for continuing on with us as we wrap this up. But again, I wanted, because, hey, you are here. Great that you did all this research for net neutrality and the implications behind it. It is one of those things that, we also freely admit that it's kind of, unfortunately, a wait and see issue because there's a lot of blue skying about what could possibly happen now that the rules have changed. But, I think that, and I said this when it first happened, I think that internet companies, service providers, what have you, I think they're smarter than to just do sweeping draconian rule changes. It's going to slowly adapt over time, and it's going to change gradually. And I think that's where, changing up strategies is only going to benefit the companies that can keep up with it. So let's talk about, the different tiers that you offer here on your website and, talk about what you do for your customers when they sign on with you.
Sure. Thank you. Well, again, as the world's leading WordPress digital experience platform, we actually want to have a technology platform that can allow you at all different levels of what you're looking for. So we actually provide a variety of plans across all company size or project size. So you may be a small company that's just getting started, and so you may want to pick one of those initial plans. You may be an already established business or a division of a business that says, I'm going to have an event or I'm launching a product or, it's one of many different digital experiences you have. So that's why we have a range here that allows as I like to say, whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur within a company, that we can help you make sure that digital experience is optimized for what we have. And so our prices, can start at $29, and you'll see $99, $249, and then we even have for enterprise, which is a big area of our business, where we can customize that and make sure that it fits everything you need from the products and performance as well as the visitors. And the thing that I would say if I were to net this out, I always think of it kind of as layers of the cake. So we want to have a platform that allows you to have this creative agility. We know you've got to get to market really quickly. You've got to build and manage and publish and continually to publish new content out there. So we have tools and technologies for that. We have, once you've built something, you're managing it, we want to be able to analyze it. So there's a data intelligence. Is it working for you? For all the folks in your organization. The third layer of the cake is it's got to integrate. You've got to integrate this probably with other things you have out there in your technology and other ways that you're going to market. So we have we work with Google and AWS and have options for folks there. And at the end of the day, probably the most important base of the cake is it's got to perform, right? So it's got to be fast, have that speed, scalability, security, things you never want to have to worry about. So that whole platform is there from initially when you get started and managing your site and digital experience to making sure that it's always working and always performing at its peak. So we're thrilled with the 75,000 customers. We're very, very lucky to have that many around the globe. And as I said, it's all shapes and sizes. And an area that we work a tremendous amount with are agencies. And those are folks that certainly on behalf of their clients are doing a lot of that work. So we'd welcome the chance to chat with anybody. And, please, you can check us out at wpengine.com. And if you are interested in any of the deeper dive in this Gen Z component, that's wpengine.com/Gen Z. So we'll leave you with those kind of research, and that is a destination.
Yeah, no, that's great information. To definitely check out, and we have a link to all that in the show notes. We'll throw the Gen Z well, but no, that was I think that was a great way to wrap up the interview. So I will say, Mary Ellen, again, I hope that you feel better soon. I know it's been a rough year for a lot of people, but you did admirably. You didn't cough into the phone once, so that was great. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ben. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll be listening in to all those topics that you mentioned at the end there, so I'm better educated. So thank you again. Appreciate
Absolutely.
the opportunity.
And hey, we'll catch up with you next time. But until next time, everyone, Mary Ellen Dugan, she is the Chief Marketing Officer for WP Engine. More at our website, Computer America, and WP.com. Mary Ellen, until next time, thank you so much. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, so there she goes, everyone. And it's just as simple as that. You can find more, again, in the show notes. Check that out when you... So, in the meantime, though, we are going to go ahead and continue on with computer and technology news, and that is brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. And here we go. So, computer and technology news brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. All right. So, how about our first and one of my favorite stories for today? And, it's no lie. We're not paid, but I will say that I'm definitely one of Elon Musk's many fans. And I will say that when they come out with new products that are different, interesting, crazy, well, can't help but report on them, and also can't help but say, why are people getting so upset? So here we go. This is from TechCrunch, and this is about a flamethrower. That's right. Elon Musk's flamethrower has already made over $3.5 million. And just to be clear, not technically a real flamethrower, more just a butane torch. But hey, it's still pretty cool. And here's the part that has me so concerned, is that people are complaining it's not really enough of a flamethrower, which is crazy that people are raising that issue. So they say that, so again, this is coming from TechCrunch, Daryl Etherington, and yeah, Elon Musk's boring company has so far been more of a lifestyle brand than a company that, digs massive tunnels. And hey, it seems to be making some kind of money. Although, to be fair, it did get the contract in Los Angeles to build the tunnel from the airport. I think it was like a shopping center or something like that. Anyways, no, the city center. But yeah, so they do dig holes, but now they also sell flamethrowers. So they have hats, which retail for $20,000, and they were capped at 50,000 units. So hey, they made $1 million there, and they said that the flamethrower, which went up for pre-order yesterday, is selling about $500 a pop. And Musk says that the total number sold was maxed out at 20,000 units. And so far, 7,000 were claimed. I'm sure that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 by now. And so, yeah, half of them are sold. And they said that it's already earned more. Pre-orders have been open through the night. And though it's still available as of this writing, so it's probably not sold out just yet. But all told, 20,000 flamethrowers would bring in about $10 million. And Tesla, one of Musk's other businesses, has made a common practice of taking pre-orders for cars before they ship, including sizable upfront payments. So, yeah, kind of the same thing for the flamethrower. And my point is that there has been some backlash that the Boring Company and that this quote unquote flamethrower is more in the neighborhood of, well, a roofing torch. If anyone out there has done roofing work, they have these torches that you have the waterproof tar paper that you put down, you heat it up so it adheres to the wood underneath of it, and it's essentially a repurposed roofing that is wildly overpriced. And I think even Musk himself knows that these things are overpriced because they also sell a flamethrower that is equally overpriced, but it does have a sticker. My point is that people were complaining it's not a real flamethrower. Folks, a flamethrower is a device used for war. Generally, they have some kind of burning gel-like liquid that would shoot dozens of feet, 20, 30 meters at a time, and completely wreak devastation, and be horrible, horrible instruments of death and destruction. The Boring Company is selling a butane torch that would be probably better served either in the kitchen or just looking silly. As long as you stay away about 8 inches from the nozzle, you're probably going to be okay. I can't believe people are so upset that this company is not actually selling an instrument of war. And yeah, that's about all I can kind of say, because you can see, the butane bottle there slips into the top, pull the trigger, shaped like a gun, and yeah, shoots flame at the front. It's silly. It's certainly attention grabbing. When a tech company says that they're going to be selling flamethrowers, it makes a great headline. But at the same time, no, it is not a real life true instrument of war. It is a butane torch. It is something that people do work with every single day in this country. And if you think it's anything or should be anything otherwise, you're probably a little bit more delusional than I think most people are willing to admit. But there you go. Could net them about $10 million when all units are sold. And hey, see what happens with the flamethrower. But don't buy one thinking that you're going to commit crimes against humanity. It's just a gimmick. And I think it's a pretty cool one. As far as gimmicks go. All right. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and move on to this next story? And just real quick, because we don't have time for a couple more stories, but I really did want to cover this one. It happened a couple of days ago, and hey, we were on our weekend break, but I will say that this coming from Mariella Moon, and Engadget, saying that CoinCheck lost about $400 million in a massive cryptocurrency heist. And if you haven't heard about CoinCheck, it's because they're primarily a service, I want to say in parts of Asia. In parts of Asia. And yeah, this is the biggest, or one of the biggest, coin heists in cryptocurrency history. This is huge. And again, just shows the volatility that, even though it's a known technology, it's open source, anyone can look at it, it still goes to show that security-wise, it's still not a science. It's still not down to a science. And how do you get anonymous, encrypted currency from one network to another without being compromised somewhere in between? And this is a problem we're seeing. So, Tokyo-based cryptocurrency exchange Check just made history, and they said that it had lost about $534 million worth of NEM tokens, NEM. NEM tokens. And one of the lesser known cryptocurrencies after its network was hacked on January 25th, where the attackers remained undetected for 8 hours, giving them enough time to steal 520 million tokens. Kept in a hot wallet, a type of storage that's connected to the internet for easy spending. And while the exact value of the stolen coins are unclear due to the ever-changing nature of cryptocurrency, because, that's one thing about cryptocurrency, is that if something like this happens where, let's say someone steals 500 million tokens, the price and value of that currency is going to plummet. It's going to be seen as unsecure. It's going to be seen as, kind of lost at this point. And people are going to try to sell it to recoup whatever cost they can. And the price is just going to plummet even further. So maybe at the time of stealing, or at the time of them stealing the tokens, they were worth about $1 a piece. And afterwards, we can actually look it up. But afterwards, when things like this happen, the price usually plummets because it's seen as an unsafe investment. So let's say that, So anyways, we'll check on the price in just a minute, but it's clear it's over $400 million at the very least, and Coincheck might have already lost more than Mt. Gox did a couple of years ago. And Mt. Gox, which was also based in Shibuya like Coincheck, was the victim of another massive cryptocurrency theft back in 2014. That was what led to the tumbling of Bitcoin way back when, where, way back when, Bitcoin was worth a staggering $800 a coin. And then Mt. Gox happened, and it showed that, a lot of people were scared off by this. They showed that, the main way that you trade Bitcoin for fiat currency was susceptible to theft, hack, and the like. The price tumbled. The price tumbled back down to $100, what have you. And yeah, it really put a depression on cryptocurrency there for a long while. So, despite the comparable figures, Coincheck's hack didn't quite affect the market the way that Mt. Gox did, where they said that where it handled around 80% of Bitcoins back in the day when there weren't a lot of exchanges yet. So they also said that affected Mt. Gox users didn't get their money back. Coincheck suspended its trading and withdrawal for all cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin, but the company promised not to run from its customers. It said that it will use its own money to reimburse all 260,000 affected users, though it didn't specify when it would make it right or when it would start distributing the funds. So there you have it. I mean, great on them for using their own money. That is probably one of the only things they could have done to, really make sure that they stayed viable. Let's see. Let's check out the past 7 days. And if you're watching the video portion, we kind of see what the NEM is trading at right now. And yeah, you see that they were about $1 a piece. And since, as of the time of us reporting on this now, it's down to about 92, 93 cents a coin. Not as bad as it could have been. Clearly not the 80% in huge reduction that we saw with Bitcoin a while ago. But it does highlight once again that this is not a perfected technology. There's still a lot of room for improvement when it comes to security, exchanges, and the like. So it's going to take a while. It's one of those things that you can't expect an anonymous, crowdsourced, cryptocurrency to have everything secure from the get-go. So there you have that. All right, so we have a couple more stories. One I really wanted to cover was Dell, because this is one that it may or may not, probably not, if I'm thinking about this logically, change the way that we see Dell. And it may come more as a way of, behind the scenes and how the corporation is structured more than the consumer facing, because I think Dell has so much, I don't want to, I hesitate to use the word goodwill, but they have brand recognition when it comes to the word Dell, D-L-L. D-E-L-L, there we go. Wow, misspelled a 4-letter word. Way to go, Ben. But, yes, so Dell may sell itself to VMware, a company it already owns. I'm from John Fingus, but hey, a lot of people have been reporting this. And yeah, for those of you who don't remember, Dell had declining PC sales for a number of years before they said, hey, we're going private, and they took themselves off the stock exchange, and they became a private entity. Since then, they seem to be doing just fine. They're still around. They're still making computers. And hey, well, they're doing okay. But now we have another company called VMware. We've talked about their product many, many a time. It's a way to make virtual machines, and it's software that essentially you take a computer, fire up VMware, and you get a virtual computer on your desktop. So if you wanted to, a lot of companies use VMware or other similar software to connect their employees via the internet, from remote locations. They use it for their tech specialists so that anything that they do, let's say one of their employees accidentally clicks a link that downloads a virus. The virus only affects the virtual computer, which can be restarted, rebooted, and up and running in a matter of minutes, as opposed to the entire network going down for some stupid reason. VMware is a very powerful service, but you don't think of it being bigger than Dell. And here's the part where CNBC sources have claimed that Dell is exploring a reverse merger, where VMware, which is the virtual machine maker, which by the way is 80% owned by Dell. Yeah. Dell owns this thing. So it's kind of like Dell buying Dell, but they said they would buy its parent company and let the resulting company go public without having to launch a new stock offering. It would also let Dell pay off some of its roughly $50 billion in debt. So, yeah, saying that this isn't set in stone, the tipsters also said that that a number of other alternatives are on the table, including straightforward public offering, other takeovers, or buying the remaining 20% stake of VMware. And Dell is unlikely to sell to an outside company or give up VMware. So they have the brightest and smartest legal minds, I'm sure, working on how best to settle their debt, consolidate their businesses, and go public. It seems like that is one of the main things that they're trying to do, is to go public once again without all the baggage that Dell has as a company. So a reverse merger would be one of the more audacious options for Dell, but it would reflect how much things have changed for Dell in the space of a couple of years. And they said that the situation isn't completely rosy until 2018, saying that Dell posted a $941 million net loss in its latest quarter, due in part to paying off a $1.7 billion worth of debt. And I mean, hey, if you have a net loss but you're paying off debt, that's still, that's doing well. So they're saying that it's in a stronger position than 2013, but a reverse merger could easily help it cut costs and raise funds that would otherwise be out of reach. So again, from a consumer standpoint, I don't think this is going to face what customers see of Dell, and in the computer space, I don't think the name Dell is going anywhere, but it may be one of those tactics that they use, restructure and get themselves a lot of capital without having to, just completely overhaul what Dell has done in the past. So it's an interesting time, but again, safe to say Dell is not going. All right, so there's that one, and we have a couple more stories. How about, all right, this one was making the rounds. Definitely tackle it, even though it has since been debunked and it's not going to happen. But this coming from Engadget, Mallory Locklear, saying that the White House says it's not considering a national 5G network. And this came from leaked documents coming from the White House, saying that they were looking into a proposed 5G nationwide network. That's right. And yeah, so they say that yesterday, Axios, they were the one, reported that Trump administration was considering the option of a government-controlled 5G network, and that documents obtained by Axios show that Trump National Security Team had proposed a couple of options, including one where the U.S. government funds and constructs a single network aimed at protecting U.S. networks from Chinese cyber attacks. However, Recode now reports that those documents were outdated and their proposed plan are not actively being considered by the administration. In fact, today, the FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, released a statement opposing such an idea, saying that the main lesson draw from the wireless sector development over the past 3 decades is that the market, not government, is the best position to drive innovation and investment, and that any federal effort to construct a nationalized 5G network would be costly and counterproductive distraction from the policies we need to help the United States win the 5G future. Blah, blah, blah. Either way, I definitely wanted to get this article in here because there was a lot of speculation about, obviously, again, in politics, there's talk of a large, not stimulus, there's a large infrastructure bill. And you could definitely include 5G as one of the tenets of infrastructure because it's not just highways and roads and bridges and things that need to be built, but the technology that's going to help us in the future. You build for tomorrow, not for what you already need today. 5G would very well be one of those things. But there's no indication that the White House is looking to explicitly that. So, yeah, if you hear that the U.S. government is looking to build a 5G network as opposed to what we currently have, where you have companies such as AT&T, Verizon, all these other companies building out their own network and then licensing it. The White House is not doing that. So just wanted to talk about that and say that, hey, this is what's happening and what is not happening. And for sure, absolute sure, the White House is not, or the U.S. government will not be building a 5G network. So, one more. I think this is the last one we have time for, but one more that I really wanted to talk about was a story going around that paints Intel maybe in a bad light, but it's one of those that has connotation different from what actually transpired. So the headline that was making waves was this idea that Intel told Chinese firms of meltdown flaws before the U.S. government. And the meltdown Spectre flaws included the whole slowdown, rebooting, security flaws. Pretty sure meltdown was Spectre was the security, meltdown was the hardware acceleration, blah, blah, blah. And they told the Chinese government before they told anyone else. Here's the thing. I don't blame them. I don't think anyone should blame Intel for telling U.S. government after telling its production line. It's, Google was the one who found it before anyone else. Google reported it to Intel. Google did not take it to the U.S. government because the U.S. government doesn't have any way of fixing this. The people who needed to be alerted first, I think in this case, in Intel's case, were definitely alerted first. Be it the people who make the chips, the software developers, I think in Austria, the software developers who were actually working on a patch, and everyone else. And then after the fact, the general public and the U.S. government were then alerted to what happened. But they definitely needed to get out ahead of this thing. And the first people to know are the people who are going to fix it. So I think there you have it. Again, the headline burning through there is like, oh, it told China before it told the U.S. As if trying to make it look like Intel is some kind of, Chinese-based company, or I don't know, more sympathetic to China than it is the U.S. Whatever the implication behind the article was, again, the reason that happened was that China has a lot of the manufacturing of chip. So they should have and were alerted first, because that's how you get the whole thing fixed. So everyone, there you have it. Computer and technology news brought to you by Fire Dragon Security, just about wrapped up. So the music means that we're done. Everyone, tune in tomorrow on the show as we have, hope I said this right, Trident. TR3DENT, because, throwing a number in there really helps things out. But join us tomorrow as we talk about the company and what they do, and hey, what they can do for, they do 3D, obviously 3D APIs. So everyone, it's gonna be very interesting as we talk about, ingredient in what they do. So everyone, until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to our guests for joining us, WP Engine. And hey, if you missed any part of this, check us out on the podcast. Until next time, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in to Computer America. Have a great one. Bye-bye.